Before the fall of the Iron Curtain, Eastern Europe had to live under the implementation of Marxism or classical Marxism, a worldview in which distinction is made between the bourgeoisie, the oppressors, and the proletariat, the oppressed, a way of looking at the world that was materialized as the communist system, which was promised to be a utopia. In Western Europe, classical Marxism didn't really get the chance to take root into the society, and therefore the forefighters of Marxism ended up focusing their utopic thinking on the culture instead, and they developed a worldview in which the native cultures of Europe are intrinsically bad, guilty, and especially oppressive, and in which non-Western cultures are intrinsically good, morally pure, and oppressed by native European culture. They wanted a society in which all cultures live peacefully in equality with one another, a society that forces the native culture to give up space and to weaken itself, its nation state, and therefore its right to self-determination as a people in order to atone for its guilt and evilness. In addition, the inviolable non-Westerners in their assumed childlike innocence finally getting the place in Europe they quote-unquote deserve, the ultimate social justice. Instead of directly overthrowing the system, the Western European Marxists gradually infiltrated and took over important areas, the media, the academic world, the labor unions, the education system, and so on, which finally led to a massive dumbing down of Western European societies in the area of cultural and historical awareness, the understanding of European history, the Western moral compass, the understanding of the importance of the nation state, an actual understanding of different cultures, religions, and the rise and fall of civilizations. All of this was replaced with political correctness and tolerance. While in Eastern Europe Marxism had an immediate effect on the system, in Western Europe it was slow, too slow for people to even notice that something was going on, and too hidden for the Western Europeans of today to simply look back and realize what has changed. They are unable to look back and identify where things went wrong because they lack the historical awareness and the conceptual framework that is required to be able to do this in the first place. In my country, the Netherlands, the Communist Party, around the time of the fall of the Iron Curtain, merged with 3 other political parties, among which a Socialist Party and 2 progressive Christian parties, to create the Green Party. Nowadays the Green Party is especially popular among students of the soft sciences, so when the Green Party in Amsterdam wanted to remove the famous I Amsterdam sign and replace it with something else, these students lacked the conceptual mental framework that is required to recognize what they're exactly dealing with. These students do not know what it exactly is that they've been voting for, because they lack the knowledge, despite being at a university, which actually is the place where this knowledge should be attained in the first place. When I tell the story to my Eastern European friends, however, they immediately know what's up. The UN Migration Pact that has recently been signed is the next step in the gradual implementation of what I call cultural communism. And I can already tell you that just like communism, it won't work. The reason communism didn't work was that it went against human nature. It was easy to sell communism, but in reality everybody having equal outcomes destroyed people's motivation to do anything. Cultural communism also won't work, not only because different cultures are not equal, but especially because people like to live with their own. Even the forefighters of multiculturalism themselves prefer to live with their fellow countrymen. In Germany, the German leftists prefer to live with other Germans, and in the UK, the British leftists prefer to live with their fellow Brits. People who support multiculturalism never live in the multicultural areas. There is a disconnect between the ideology in their heads and their actual human behavior, just as was the case under classical communism. So to summarize, both classical Marxism and cultural Marxism won't work for the same reason. Both go against human nature, and therefore the utopia will end up being a dystopia instead. Classical communism and cultural communism look very different from the outside, even though they're both based on a Marxist framework. However, there is an important difference in the long run. When the Poles finally got rid of the communist system, the situation was a mess, but Poland was still Poland, and they've been rebuilding their country for a few decades now, and it looks very promising. When the Germans will finally realize that multiculturalism isn't the utopia they expected, and then get rid of the ideology, at least in their own heads, the demographic consequences remain. And and Germany is no longer German. You can get rid of a political system, but you cannot undo a demographic change. Therefore, in the case of cultural communism, the destruction in the long run will be permanent, and Western Europe will never be the same. Sorry for the cynical video, but I just hope to open people's eyes to how serious the situation we're in Western Europe is. We in Western Europe should get this idea out of our head that everything is fine and that our region of the world is doing well. We are not doing well. We are currently in the middle of an irreversible, long-term process that will destroy our part of the world. This is Paul from debatealive.com. I wish you well.
Good job!